is, but they're trying to get the reader emotionally involved in his case. Isn't it terrible that we are deporting him? Now, what's the subtext to that story? The subtext to that story is 7/7 was done by Muslims. And you really can only get emotionally involved in that story if you accept that subtext. So they're reinforcing their flawed position on the bombings with a phony bone of contention. And there was another great example the other day with the Queen and Abu Hamza. Anyone see that one? Ooh, the Queen said Abu Hamza is dangerous for Britain. Really? Did the Queen really say that? Did someone know? And there was this contention over A, whether she should have said it, and B, whether it should have been reported. It's a phony bone of contention, because once you enter that debate and the argument over whether the Queen should have said that, you're automatically accepting that he's a dangerous Al-Qaeda person. This is the person who was chums with Rashid Aswat. Rashid Aswat, the MI6 agent. Wouldn't surprise me if Abu Hamza is an MI5 or an MI6 agent. But they're trying to get you to accept that they're not, and that they're Al-Qaeda, by creating phony bones of contention. There was another one as well the other day. I'm trying to think what it was. Oh yeah, suicide bombers. Whenever there's a suicide bomber reported, I always think, well, show me the leg and I'll believe it was a suicide bomber. Or show me at least part of the body. Or the upset mother. They never do that. And this bone of contention, I think it was a UN compound or something that had been some suicide bomber. They were arguing over, someone said, oh, he was just a teenager. He was really young. And then someone else had said, no, he was 28 or something. So they're then arguing over the age of the suicide bomber. Which means when you hear that argument, you automatically accept the initial lie. And the media is full of these phony bones of contention. So just keep your eye out for them. I think in that headline there's possibly a subliminal in there, that Neil Sanders was talking about subliminals, and I showed you it there. Bomb victim Kate. So this is a completely separate story, and the words bomb victim are lining up with Kate Middleton. Now I don't know what's in that. There's been quite a few like this with Harry. Bomb, massacre with Harry, and I don't know what's going on there. Maybe Neil Sanders can tell you more about that. Okay. The media hit piece. This is where someone might say something. For example, they might talk about 9/11, or they might talk about something which is damaging to the agenda. So they've got to do a hit piece on that person, and they've got to ridicule that person, make them look like an idiot. So I've chosen, I thought, well, who's the nicest person in Britain? Would anyone care to say who they think the nicest person in Britain is?
Bobby Charlton.
You were looking at the screen.
Jack Charlton.
Okay, yeah, so I chose Bobby Charlton, right? Bobby Charlton, you know, who doesn't like Bobby Charlton? So I thought, well, I'll try and do a hit piece on Bobby Charlton, as they do hit pieces on David Icke and people like that. But so it was actually extremely easy, just to demonstrate that I could pick out anyone in this audience. Just speak to your mates and write a hit piece on you. You could do it with anyone. Anyone could be made to look like a complete fool and kook if they write a hit piece on you. So here's the Bobby Charlton hit piece. Now, most of the information in this is actually factually true, but this is just for the purposes of this talk. I don't want to get sued by Bobby Charlton. Okay. Aging ex-soccer player Bobby Charlton, 74, born in a northeast pit village to a family of peasant coal miners, is well known for his incomprehensible Geordie accent. Having left his favourite pastime as a footballer at the age of 35, he hasn't done a day's work in his life. Although some would question whether football can be considered work in the first place, he tried football management in 1973 with part-timers Preston North End, who were soon relegated. So poor was his record there, the following season he made himself player-manager, thinking he could sort out their problems on the pitch by reinstating his now ageing legs. The following season he left, realising he couldn't manage a child's Christmas party, never mind a football team. Totally unemployable and desperate, but wanting to continue to exploit football for money, he went begging back to the hugely rich Manchester United, where they took pity on him and made him a director. A director of what, though, is not known. with him having so little to offer the club, although he seems to do well as a director of nothing with his 5-bedroom detached house and top-of-the-range 30-grand Jag. Last year, Charlton was voted the 4th greatest Manchester United player of all time. But that's hardly an achievement when you consider the top 3 were adulterer Ryan Giggs, alcoholic George Best, and karate kick madman Eric Cantona. Charlton has distanced himself from his wayward bloodsport brother Jack, who enjoys killing wild animals on a regular basis and was known for hacking players and occasionally breaking their legs. So vain is Bobby Charlton that when he began to lose his hair in the 1960s, he refused to go bald gracefully, sporting a style of stranded, isolated hairs, which would often flop around when he was running before he would tug them back over his head. This style is today known as the Bobby Charlton comb-over and is undoubtedly Charlton's only lasting contribution to society. Okay, so beware if someone writes a hit piece on you. Okay, another aspect of the media is if you just need to go into any newsagent and look at the spread of papers, you have to say that they're colluded, that they're all taking their orders from somewhere. It doesn't take a genius to work that out. And items like this illustrate this. This was 2 BBC news journalists were talking about Libya, and they were talking about some celebrations in Martyr Square in Libya, and they were showing pictures of something in India, of all these crowds in India. Now, the point being that the other news channels, such as Channel 4, ITV, they should have leapt on that. They should have had it in their satirical comedy programs. They should have had it on their main news that this mistake was made, because they're supposed to be in competition for them for news. But no, if you'd done that, it would have damaged the overall arching agenda, which is Gaddafi is evil and need to be getting rid of. So they can't have another news channel criticising this, and there are other examples of this which prove that they're colluded. Now, media blindness is another aspect. I'm sorry for putting up obscene images on the screen. I'm going to create a hypothetical scenario just to show you that the media put the blinkers on and ignore certain stories which don't fit their version of, well, not the truth, but the version that they want you to perceive. Let's just imagine that Nick Clegg wants some bodyguards and he recruits 3 bodyguards. And one day he says to the lead bodyguard, hey, will you murder the chief of the Metropolitan Police for me with the other bodyguards? And he says, no, I'm your bodyguard. Don't want to do that. He says, if you don't do it, we'll sort your family out. We'll murder your family. So he goes and does it. He murders the chief of police. Next week, Clegg says to him, I want you to murder the health minister. So they go and do that. I want you to blow up the police station. I want you to murder someone from the Foreign Office and various other people in the government. And they go and do that. Then the British government finds out about it. So they issue an arrest warrant for Clegg. Clegg hops on a plane and buggers off to Scotland. And the Scottish government say we're not handing Clegg over because this is just a political issue. Right? Here's the question. Should that be on the news if that happened? It's not a difficult one, is it? Of course it should be on the news. And it should be on the news in every country in the world. The lead story. Now, this actually allegedly happened in December 2011 in Iraq. The Vice President, Tariq al-Hashimi, according to his 3 bodyguards who have given lengthy confessions here, this is in the Iraqi Interior Ministry. They showed videos of his 3 bodyguards, and he had been ordering them, according to them, to murder all of these people. Now this is Tariq al-Hashimi, who was essentially installed as Vice President by the Americans. And it would be my guess that al-Hashimi was getting all of these weapons, things like remotely detonated roadside bombs and that kind of thing. He had them all stored in his house, according to these 3 guys. I would bet that they were American weapons. Because al-Hashimi had meetings with George Bush, where they discussed how they could deal with the more extreme elements of the installed Iraqi government. But that's a story that they don't want to know you about. I mean, look at this image here. This is in the Iraqi Interior Ministry. This is the arrest warrant for the Iraqi Vice President. Where's the BBC microphone? Press TV there. There's no CNN. Okay, if you dig around on their website, you will find the story, but it certainly wasn't a lead news item. The reason why they don't want you to know that, because it doesn't fit in with what they want the public to perceive, which is that Iraq, any violence in Iraq is done by insurgents or Al-Qaeda. It's not done by members of the government that the Americans have put in place. He's currently, well, they've actually had a trial without him. He fled to Turkey, this al-Hashimi, and the Iraqi government are demanding him back, and they've actually held a trial without him there, and they've sentenced him to death. And he's now saying, oh, it's a kangaroo court. Now, the actual videos of his bodyguards, they were available on the internet, and I couldn't find any English translation for them. Can you believe that? And I've actually had them translated by a friend of mine who's an Iraqi. This is a 6-minute clip. I won't play it all. I will play this on my TV show at some point. But they go into detail as to what murders al-Hashimi was getting them to carry out.
Wanted to cause maximum damage, and it was a police car. 3 people lost their life through this because explosive was so intense and so big to cause maximum damage. When they left the police station, we blew that up instead. Personally, I was trapped. I'm a captain in the army. I was basically stuck and trapped in that operation. Tariq al-Hashimi has destroyed my life. I wanted to go higher and higher in the army, and basically I got trapped in his undoing. He destroyed my family as well. Basically, I was threatened, you either work with us hand in hand, or we'll finish you and finish your family as well.
Okay, so that's media blindness. Now, I mentioned Murdoch before, and the phone hacking smokescreen. I don't call it a scandal. This guy's more shrewd than you realise. He has not been hauled because of his activities involving phone hacking in front of this committee, in my opinion. In my opinion, he is responsible for himself being there. I think he has orchestrated it, and I will explain why. There's an anomaly with regards how the phone, I won't call it hacking because it's actually listening to people's messages. When you buy a new mobile phone, if you don't set the password on the mailbox, anyone can listen to your phone messages if they know your telephone number by dialing a particular number. And that's what these journalists were doing. They were listening to messages. Now, the story broke on the 5th of July with, and this was reported in more, not just The Independent, the News of the World had hacked Millie Dowler's parents' phone. It's a big scandal. The following day, the News of the World has hacked the Soham family's parents' phones. 2 little girls who were murdered, another little girl that was murdered, Madeleine McCann, little girl that's missing, stroke, murdered, whatever. 7th of July, they've hacked her phone. This is so scandalous that on the 8th of July, the News of the World announced that they would have to close because of these 3 things, okay? Now, it was announced late on the 7th of July that the News of the World would be replaced by the Sun on Sunday, okay? Now, when you create a new business or newspaper, the first thing that you need to do is secure a domain name. So this article here is in the Telegraph, and it says, how long before the sun on Sunday rises? This was produced late on the 7th, sort of 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock on the 7th of July. They were talking about the fact that the News of the World would have to be replaced. But if you go to the Internet Domain Name Registration body, News International registered the sunonsunday.co.uk and .com on the 5th of July. Now, if they've registered the domain name on the 5th of July, it means they've probably made the decision to purchase that domain on the 4th or earlier than that. So how does this story hang together? This suggests that News International, Murdoch's company, knew that those 3-4 stories were going to be placed. And it smacks of a psyop for me, because these stories of little girls being murdered, that's designed to pull at your heartstrings so that you're not critically analysing what's really going on. I think they needed a reason to get rid of all of the whatever documents were at the News of the World, but I think the other reason why this smokescreen was put in place, if you just look at the date, anyone recognise that date?
Yep.
The London bombings. This was the anniversary of the London bombings, so the London bombings did not get a look in at that time that this story was breaking, because this was considered more important. And we had just before this year, last year, we'd had Tony Farrell come out, principal police intelligence analyst, saying that London bombings were an inside job. We'd also had Moat, who was locked up for 150 odd days he had won his trial pertaining to 7/7. So we had two very, very key positive developments of getting the truth out about 7/7, which could have found their way onto mainstream newspapers if we had an honest media. So it's a bit like if you consider a sweet shop and you want to burgle the safe, so you send some kids in to nick some sweets first before you nip through the back and burgle the safe. So the police are chasing after the kids and arresting them for a minor crime, whereas behind the scenes there's a major crime going on. But what is that major crime? What is the major crime of Rupert Murdoch and his phony organisations? Well, these books tell you what the crime is. Murdoch is an accessory to the murder of 56 innocent British people. That's what his crime is. Now compare that crime, the murder of 56 innocent British people, with listen to someone's phone message. Where's the comparison? What is the crime here? So what he's doing, and they massively ramp up this phone thing, make it into they make a mountain out of a molehill to mask the real crime. Right. Just regarding mind control, I'm going to talk about Manchurian candidates. I think most people in this room will know what they are. It's if someone can be hypnotized and then used to perform some act such as murder or any other act that person wouldn't otherwise do unless they were under hypnosis. And the notion that people will not do things that they wouldn't otherwise do under hypnosis is you ask Neil Sanders, it's ridiculous. You can get people to do practically anything under hypnosis. It's down to the skill of the hypnotist. And this was demonstrated on the Derren Brown show, the entertainer and hypnotist, they did an experiment where he hypnotized a young lad to give him a replica gun. They sent him along to a talk being given by Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry's given his talk. There was a trigger word. This was all on mainstream TV, and the lad stood up and he shot Stephen Fry in the chest. Obviously, there weren't real bullets. And then the lad was interviewed afterwards, and he couldn't remember a thing. So it showed you how simple it is to hypnotically program someone to murder someone. Okay. Now, I think that they use other methods as well as hypnosis, such as psychotronics and drugs, etc. But trauma-based mind control, yes. But the point being that it can be done. That's the point I'm making, by someone who has the skill to be able to do it. Now, I've put up various people on the screen here who I think there's a strong possibility that they were Manchurians. And we're on a little bit short of time. I was going to drill down into most of them, but I think what I'll do is I'll just go to the Raoul Moat case. Okay, because I've done a little bit of research into that. Okay, so let's just nip forward to Raoul Moat. Okay. Right, let's just briefly explain the circumstances of this. The guy is a bouncer from Newcastle. He got out of prison, I think, on the 1st of July 2010. On the 3rd of July 2010, he went to a house in a place called Berkeley where he shot his ex-girlfriend and his ex-girlfriend's new lover. He killed the lover. The girlfriend survived. He laid low for about a day, and then he rang the police and said, I'm going to murder a particular police officer in a parked traffic car. And he went, and so it was totally premeditated. He shot him through the window of the car. That was PC David Rathband. Rathband survived. He actually pretended that he was dead after he shot him in the face with this shotgun, and he believes that saved his life, Rathband, because he was convinced that Moat was trying to kill him. Now, when this was in the... Sorry, I'll backtrack. After that happened, Moat went on the run for about 6 days and was later shot in a police standoff. The official story is that he shot himself, but I don't actually buy that. But that's by the by. Now, I believe that whole story, that the guy he came out of prison, he found out that his girlfriend was seeing someone else, so he just went bonkers, basically. And I believed all of that. It sounded quite plausible to me. Until the 29th of February this year. This is the police officer that Raoul Moat shot, and he supposedly committed suicide on the 29th of February this year. And I actually don't believe, well, not that I don't believe, I query that. Because as soon as it was released that Rathband had died, this photo appeared in the media, right? That Rathband had been going out with Lisa French. He'd been having an affair with Lisa French. All right, now, as soon as I saw that photograph, I went, whoa, what's going on here? Something not right here. Because I know who Lisa French is. Anyone know who Lisa French is? No. Anyone? 7/7 victim. Lisa French was a victim of 7/7. Now, in 7/7, there were 3 bombs on tube trains, and there was 1 bomb on a bus. On that bus, there was a lot of witnesses, and none of them, not one of them, reliably identified the terrorist, supposed terrorist. He's called Hasib Hussain, 6'4" Asian guy with a massive backpack on him. Not one of them remembered seeing him, okay? Until the government inquest in 2011, where Lisa French gave evidence. Lisa French had been interviewed on TV more than once and never mentioned Hasib Hussain, the terrorist. Okay? I'm going to read an extract from Nick Collestrom's book, Terror on the Tube. So the government inquest into 7/7 started in, I think it was November 2010, and ran through to January 2011. And Lisa French gave testimony at this inquest. I think she was knocked unconscious in the bomb. She had teeth knocked out and she had perforated eardrums, I think. But other than that, she recovered. Now, the inquest heard the bus witness Lisa French seeming to recall the figure of Hasib Hussain on the top deck of the 30 bus, which had exploded in Tavistock Square. I made the decision not to go and sit next to him because I was aware we both had very big bags and that we, would be taking up a lot of room. She recalled him carrying probably a laptop rucksack, quite large, sort of square. So I think that's why I thought it was a laptop bag rather than a camping rucksack. And I also had a laptop. It was a squarish laptop bag like hers, only bigger. And he was carrying it in his hands and then wearing it over his shoulder. That announcement made headlines around the world. But why had we never heard about this before? This is the first instance of the inquest finding a witness who claimed to have seen something like one of the terrorists where he was supposed to be. She suddenly became famous from what looks like a new memory she had acquired. A moving account was given by Lisa French of the bomb blast in Tavistock Square in 2008 or early 2009, 3.5 years after the event. She had been diagnosed as having post-traumatic stress disorder and given cognitive behavioural therapy to try and cope with life. The earlier account, she blacked out at the moment of blast, so doesn't remember anything. But when she came to, people were talking about bomb and bus. She does not mention the terrorist, alleged terrorist. A year after this detailed account, which has no hint of seeing the terrorist, she comes up with detailed memories of going up the stairs behind Hasib Hussain, implying she could recognise him, see him with his laptop bag sitting down, etc. Did the therapist plant the memory in her? She said, I went for quite a number of sessions, over 20 with my psychologist, and he performed some cognitive behavioural therapy with me and also some rapid eye movement therapy too. The CBT therapy involved some discussion around what had happened and how that made me feel, and quite a lot of homework. So she's not spoken about it for 5.5 years, and suddenly the inquest comes and she says, oh, I remember the terrorist. And she's been getting treatment by a psychiatrist who's done CBT therapy with her. So it looks possible that she's been messed with to lie at the inquest. Now, the PC Rathband, the one Raoul Moat shot, so she's the most important witness on that bus, propping up the government's fake narrative, right? And Rathband was dating her. Now, here comes the crux. He was dating her, according to mainstream media, from August 2011. All right, so he'd only actually known her for 6-7 months before he committed suicide, right? And the mainstream media line is that he met her on Twitter. This guy's disfigured, he's blinded. A year later, after he's shot in the face and blinded, he's chatting up women on Twitter and meeting them. Okay, now I find that hard to believe, all right? I've spoken to quite a lot of people in the Northeast who've told me that Rathband, let's just say, liked women. And there's nothing wrong with that. Now, if I looked to see where Rathband worked. The white line on this map of the northeast, he was a traffic cop at Eatle Lane Police Station, and that zone there is the region that Eatle Lane covers. So Rathband would carry out would deal with hundreds of traffic incidents in that zone. The red dot on the right is where Lisa French lived then and lives now. So she lived within a few miles of his patch that he worked in as a copper, obviously before he was shot. So I think it's possibly more likely that he has met her before he was shot. Okay, and I've been trying to find out whether that's the case. That's a map of the UK with that little zone. So he worked in that zone, she